I hear a lot of answers right there. Okay, well, I'll tell you from my perspective. The first thing that always strikes me with this country is opportunity. As I said, I've traveled to dozens of countries, hundreds of different cities, and every time I'm in the USA, I am pleasantly shocked and amazed by just the wealth of opportunity in this nation for those who are willing to see it and those who are willing to take advantage of it. There are many great countries in this world. There's many cool places to travel to, but as far as I've seen, there is no other country with just the scale, the depth, and the breadth of opportunity as this nation. And I tell you that coming from the UK. Second thing, of course, that strikes me is freedom, liberty. Land of the free, home of the brave. Now, when you think about it, and I think a lot of people don't think about this, this, as far as I know, is the first country that was ever founded on a set of ideas and principles. Prior to the USA, every single nation has been some form of dictatorship, essentially. Whether this is tribal leadership, whether this is a monarchy, just having kings, queens, and a royal family, or just having an outright, straight-up dictator. This is the first country that was founded based off of the idea of principles of liberty, freedom, individual human rights. We all understand the history of this nation and the history of the world. It's taken time for those values to come to fruition for each and every single person within this nation. But the progress that has been made here in a relatively short space of time has been absolutely incredible. And I think that so many people dwell on some of the dark aspects of this nation's history. And when they do that, they're not thinking about how much progress has actually been made, right? People are stuck thinking about the past and they're not looking at where we are right now. Funnily enough, oftentimes the people who do this call themselves progressives, but they're stuck looking backwards all the time instead of looking forwards and looking at where we are right now and seeing how amazing this is. Following on from that, equality under the law. Equality in the social perspective and also in the legal perspective. Now, this is something that's, again, quite a radical idea in terms of human history. When you look throughout history, when you look around the world, there have always been different rules, different laws, different applications for different people, depending on who you are, depending on your race, your ethnicity, your gender, whatever the case may be. Again, this has existed in the past in the USA, but where we are right now, it's a massive testament to the strides being made, just how equal this country is, regardless of your social class, regardless of your skin color, your gender, whatever it may be, all the things that make individuals unique. You can, if you make good decisions and you are competent and you strive, then you can absolutely find success in this nation. That's why so many people, legally and illegally, are trying by the millions to come over to this nation, right? That's not an accident. Next thing that strikes me about this nation that I think makes America great is the entrepreneurial attitude. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I'm a creative individual. And there's a reason I spend so much time over here in the USA. I come from the UK. The UK is a great country in many regards. But when it comes to entrepreneurship and when it comes to people having the mentality that cheers on entrepreneurship and celebrates it and wants people to succeed, I just find that the level of, every time I come to the USA, I'm genuinely blown away by just how much people embrace me and support me. And I see that with other people. If people see you striving, they cheer you on. They're not telling you to slow down or telling you to stop or trying to hold you down for the most part. They're trying to encourage you and see how they can support you. And I can tell you that is not true in every nation. Next thing I love about the USA is just the optimism. I love the optimism of this country. There are so many parts and places of the world where people just get stuck in negativity and pessimism all the time. As a Brit, I can tell you, many of my fellow British people find it sometimes annoying how optimistic and patriotic Americans are. Right? I've lived in the UK for a long time, and I've never heard people cheering, UK, UK, UK. I come to the States, people get a little bit excited. What do you hear? USA, USA. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love that. I love the flags. I love the fact I see the flags everywhere. When I'm in the UK, I'm like, man, why are we so ashamed of our own flag? I don't see the UK flag anywhere. Oh, shots fired, shots fired. On that note, someone was asking me yesterday if I could run for vice president, and I said I was born in the wrong country. But if I do, I'm running under the slogan MACA, and that's Make America a Colony Again. I love you guys. Just kidding. I love you. I love you. By the way, I don't think my ancestors were involved in all that stuff, but next thing I love about the USA and American people is kindness. Honestly, kindness, sense of humor. We're witnessing it here right now. Just such a kind people. Every single person is an individual, so of course everyone has a different personality. But when you travel around the world, you also find that culture is a sort of collective personality. I'm sure even within this nation, you'll find when you go to certain places, people are just generally friendlier, more open, more hospitable, more polite. But I find that American people just in general are genuinely kind to each other. And this is what you don't see oftentimes in the media and on social media because it doesn't go viral, right? There's no news about, hey, a whole bunch of, millions of people got on well with each other and we're kind to each other and we're polite. That's not news. It's only when something crazy happens or when someone goes out there and does something horrible. That's what it is that makes the news. And it's very important for all of us to realize that those are the anomalies and that is not the norm. What is the norm? Is this room right here? This is what is norm. When I think of the USA, this is what I think of. People of all ages, people from all stripes, just being kind, genuine, and decent towards one another. Along that note, this is the most diverse country in the world in many regards. When I say diversity, I don't just mean in the shallow sense that many people mean it, meaning that people have different skin colors and genders and sexualities, but they all think exactly the same way. What I mean is that I always say that in the UK and in most countries in Europe, everything operates within this window. In the USA, everything operates within this window. Now, this can cause a lot of culture wars, this can cause a lot of battles of ideas, and so on and so forth. It can make it very dynamic, it can get a little bit heated at times, as you all know, but I think it's fantastic that there is a nation where that is still going on, and people feel free to speak and express themselves, go out on the street, whether or not I personally agree with them, and shout about their cause. It's healthy. It's actually healthy. There are so many nations where the population is just completely repressed, and they're not even able to express themselves anything close to the way that they can here. Even in my own home nation, I'm sure some of you have seen some of the craziness that's happening in the UK, where people are being, arrested or getting phone calls and visits from the police for posting memes and jokes online, or for offending somebody. And the last thing that I think makes America great, I touched on it earlier, but this is pride. When I say pride, I don't mean the nonsense that is we spend an entire month celebrating in June. When I say pride, I mean people feeling comfortable in their skins, and I mean people being genuinely proud of themselves, their nation, and their neighbors. Pride is a tricky word because it has multiple meanings. Now, moving on from what makes America great, what are some of the threats that I personally see to that greatness? The number one threat, I believe, to the USA is the fact that I think there's a very significant percentage of Americans that don't understand just how special and unique this nation is. There's an absence of perspective, and with that absence of perspective comes an absence of gratitude, right? This is why people are constantly pushing to dismantle and disrupt and tear everything down, right? When people talk about how terrible America is, and there are people who say this, even Americans, I usually say compared to what? Right? What are you comparing to? If you compare to the utopia, then okay. But if you're comparing to history, if you're comparing to the rest of the world, it becomes very, very clear that to be born in this nation or to live in this nation, you are privileged. We hear a lot about this term privilege, but no one talks about the fact that if you are simply here, if you have this passport, if you have all these opportunities are just open to you. As I said already, so many people from all around the world would love to come and live in this country, and there is a reason for that. And when you have true gratitude for something, you don't attack it and undermine it in the very reckless way I see many people doing. More threats that I see to this great nation include the breakdown of family. This is a massive one. This is something that the USA does not want to be number one in. Of all the nations in the world, sadly, this country has one of the highest rates of children growing up in single-parent families, right? Marriage has been attacked, the family overall has been attacked, and people are not taking some of these things as seriously as we probably all wish that they would. And it's a touchy subject to talk about because people can take it very personally, but we all know how important it is for children to be growing up in a stable household. So that's another thing that I think is a massive threat to the country, and it's a greater threat even because people do not want to talk about it. Another issue is health. This is one that is often not talked about, but I think it should concern more people that for the first time, outside of massive wars, the life expectancy in this country is actually going down. It's dropped from 78 to 76, I believe. In the UK, for example, or in most European countries, the average life expectancy is actually about 6 to 8 years higher than it is in the USA. So I don't know all of the solutions to that. I have some ideas, but I think that's something that should be on people's radar. And I think it's something that should be being addressed from the social perspective, the cultural perspective, and the political perspective. It's certainly something that needs to be put on the table. Another threat I see to the nation, and this does get talked about a lot, but this is the rise and the creep up of identity politics. To massive credit to my home country of Great Britain, one thing I love about the UK is we don't use racial prefixes. Nobody says that I'm Black British, or I'm African British, or this person is Asian British, or white British, or... You are American. American. So, yes, drop the prefix. It is, but you don't have to play their game. You don't have to play their game. Yeah. That's where I think the USA has made massive strides, but there is certainly room for improvement in that regard. And along that line comes the polarization as well. Look, you're always going to have some degree of social, cultural, and political polarization. That's not unique to this country. It's something that's always existed. It's probably something that's always going to exist as long as human beings have free thought and we have opinion. I'd be concerned if there was zero polarization, because it means that nobody is thinking. However, there's a level that it can get to where it becomes concerning, where it becomes dangerous, where families and friends are being pulled apart by having different ideas, sometimes on, quite unsubstantial topics. So I know how easy it is to fall into the tribalistic thinking of always just wanting to see people who are different from yourselves as opposition or as enemies and wanting to sort of fight all the time and defeat that. But you can fight in a civil fashion. And if we're fighting with words, then it means that people are not out there fighting on the street. There's only 3 ways you can resolve any conflict. It doesn't matter the scale of it. This could be between individuals, it could be with friends, family, it could be between nations. And those ways are conversation, separation, and physical violence. I don't think that we want the last option, and I also don't think that most people are keen on the second option. So that means that we always have to talk it out. You have to fight for your ideas, you have to fight for your values. That's why I think events like this are incredibly important because this is where we can talk about ideas and we can talk about how we can frame our good, high-quality, pro-social ideas in the best way for the current and future generations. Now, I've already touched a little bit on this, but I want to talk about some areas where I see room for improvement. Now, we've talked a lot about how special and unique the USA is. I believe that the USA is the greatest exporter of good ideas in the entire world. I do also have bad news. I also think that the USA is the greatest exporter of bad ideas in the entire world. Now, a lot of people don't understand why non-Americans care so much about what's going on in the USA. I see this on social media all the time, right? You know, you're British, why do you even care? Why are all these people around the world even watching these elections and commenting about things going on in the US? And it's because when the USA sneezes, the world catches a cold, right? What happens here has a massive impact on other people all around the world, certainly in the Anglosphere. I'm talking Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand. The things that happen here, a couple years later, it's almost guaranteed they're going to start seeing these things happening in the rest of the West, and then later down the line in the rest of the world. So when those ideas are good, when great things are happening, that has a positive ramifications on everybody else. But when bad ideas such as identity politics and critical race theory and queer theory and gender theory, all of these kind of things getting exported and put in schools, not just here, but in other places and in universities, that's a great cause for concern. So that's certainly something that can be improved upon. I'm not here to talk about specific political policies today, but I would certainly say that in the areas of health, there is improvement to be made in terms of the schools and education. I know that that's a hot topic right now. A lot of people I'm aware of who are pushing for things like school choice, people who are increasingly homeschooling. And again, if you want to maintain the greatness of the country, it's about educating the future generation. Different people have different ideas about the best approach towards that, but I think we can all agree that the education system, however you view that, can certainly be improved. Another thing that I think is really important, and this comes into the fourth part of my talk here, and this is about rethinking conservatism. Now, before I dive right into that, I want to talk about two massive advantages that I believe that conservatism and conservatives have. The first one, and again, I say this having spent time all over the world, and the truth is that most people in this world are conservative. Most people are conservative by default, partly because it is just in line with our natural nature. If you think about the conservative ideas, they tend to just be common sense ideas. They're things that they sound right, they work, they've been functioning typically for hundreds, sometimes thousands of years, and they're things that people naturally desire and think are good. The second advantage, and I've just touched on this, is the fact that the ideas actually work. And when your ideas work, you don't need to sell people on them so much, right? The proof is in the pudding, as they say, right? There are a lot of people out there, particularly on the left and progressive side of the aisle, who in recent years, particularly over the last decade or so, they've been pushing some really, really, really goofy ideas. Whether this is abolish the police, or men can menstruate and get pregnant, or should compete in women's, these are nonsensical ideas. These are ideas that you can only believe in if you have been brainwashed into them, right? And I believe the conservative advantage is you don't need to brainwash or indoctrinate people into ideas that function, make sense, and are already aligned with the human heart and people's natural proclivities. I think it's very important for, yesterday I actually did a podcast with Vivek, so that'll be coming out in the next couple weeks, by the way. But in that conversation, I actually referred to him as what I believe to be a progressive conservative. Now, that might sound like an oxymoron to some people, but when I think of conservatism, I don't think it simply means staying still and maintaining the status quo. I don't believe that all of you would be here in this room if you did not want to see some form of change within your country, right? So I don't think the word change or the word progress should be given up to progressives or people on the left side of the aisle, because conservatives want change too. They may want different changes. They may want change at a different pace. They may not want to destroy the entire system in the process of making those changes. And I think that that is sensible. But I think one of the disadvantages that conservatives can have is that it can be hard to sell that message, especially to younger people, right? There aren't so many super sexy conservative slogans, right? Telling people to, you know, slow down and, hey, be careful and think about that. Like, those aren't really catchy slogans right there. But what you do have to do is you have to sell a vision to the young people. You have to connect the dots between the ideas, the policies, and the results. When young people are making up their mind on things, they're highly influenced. All of us could be influenced. But I think for a long time, with the culture being primarily on the left and liberal side of the aisle and conservatives having given up the culture for far too long, people are looking for examples. They're looking for role models. They're seeing what is cool, what is trendy. And conservatism needs to be made cool, because I think it is cool. When I say this, I don't mean it in some sort of contrived manner, but I think that people need to see who is espousing these ideas, how they're living their lives, the results that they're getting. And the truth is that living by the ideas and the values that we believe in fundamentally leads to a happy, prosperous, and fulfilled life. When I look at the social justice warrior types, and I've seen them up close because I've been protested by them before, I don't see happy, functional people. Right? We all know the meme of, you know, the person with the blue hair and they're screaming and they're going. You don't look at that crowd and go, that's what I aspire towards. So as conservatives, you want people to look at yourselves, look at how you're leading your family, look at how you're leading in your community, look at the things that you're achieving, and that is the best form of advertising as far as I'm concerned, because that is aspirational. So we need to connect those dots between the conservative ideas and why they actually matter and what it leads to. We need to embrace culture. As I said, I think for far too long, conservatives, not just in the USA, but in the UK and many other nations, they've kind of just like given culture to the left side of the aisle. This includes music, this is arts, this is movies, all the creative endeavors. I think it was a mistake, and it's been a mistake for too long to just let the opposition take care of all that. Culture is massively influential. I know Andrew Breitbart has that very famous quote about politics being downstream of culture, and that is absolutely true. And conservatives need to keep pushing to move the needle of culture. I'm seeing many positive signs that that is happening in all sorts of different sectors, and I think we're actually at the very early stage of something exciting that is going on there. We need to build alternatives as well. A mistake I can see too often on the conservative side is simply criticizing what is out there, but not offering or creating alternatives. Now, as a musician, this is something I've always sought to do through my music and through everything else that I do. I'm a rapper. A lot of people, when they think of rap and when they think of hip-hop, they're thinking of you know, very materialistic and violent and misogynistic lyrics and all that kind of stuff. And it's very easy to point your finger at things you don't like and say you don't like them. It's much better, as far as I'm concerned, to create and to support the alternatives that do exist. The things, the people, the organizations, the companies who are in line with your values and who are putting out products and messages and things that you appreciate and you like and you value. You should be giving them at least as much support as you are criticizing the things that you don't like. It can't just be all criticism and no building. And the last point I'll make here, where I see a lot of room for improvement and where I think we can all do a better job, is simply listening to people, listening to grievances, and not being dismissive of them. When I travel around the world, especially, in fact, especially here in the USA, when I talk to certain people, they have a misconception about conservatives that conservatives don't care. Conservatives don't care about them. They don't care about minorities. They don't care about women. They don't care about this. There's this branding that has been attached to conservatisms and to conservatives and has been attached to Republicans that they don't care as much as the Democrats do, let's say. And look, people are chuckling because we know that that is not true. However, the truth is there are millions of people in this country and outside of it who believe that. Right? There are people. I was in an Uber last year. I was in Baltimore, and I was in an Uber. And I don't normally like to talk politics in a car, but you know, the driver he brought up the subject, and he was just talking politics, and he said something really interesting. He said, "You know what, man? I'm actually more of a conservative, but I just can't get behind the Republicans because they're racist." And I don't agree with that statement, but the fact that he, and I would assume many other people around this nation believe that, shows that there is still work to be done in terms of the narrative, the messaging, and the branding. I know that it's not true. So to bring this all together, I think it's important for everyone in this room to realize that we're living in an increasingly multipolar world. There are many countries, nations that are rising in terms of the economy, in terms of liberty, in terms of being great and better places to live. There's more competition, and there's going to be more competition than ever before. And I think that for the USA to continue to do well and to continue to make great strides, people can't be complacent. I'm extraordinarily proud, despite not being American, I'm so proud of the progress that has been made in this nation. I feel proud about America despite not being an American. But we can't rest on the laurels. We cannot be complacent about that and just assume, hey, we're number one, so why try harder? As I said before, it's extraordinarily important for the entire world that the USA remains functional and remains great and remains a beacon to the rest of the world. So, thank you. So I simply encourage you all to continue to think freely, to walk righteously, and to speak boldly and with courage. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Thank you.